Good evening. The time is 5 o'clock. I'd like to call this workshop for the Belton Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. The meeting's been duly called. Notice of the meeting's been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Please note, Ms. McDonald will not be in attendance. First item on the agenda is public comments. Connie?
No, sir.
Okay. None? Then let me move on to my next one. Give me a second. Next item on the agenda, update on goal number 3. Dr. Smith?
Yes, so board, thanks for spending some time with us tonight. We're going to go through 3 pieces of this puzzle tonight. As we talked about attracting, retaining, and supporting a world-class team of employees, learning and continuous learning as a staff is important to us. And so we need to continue to focus on growing and developing as a system. You can see the key progress measure was a refined professional learning system will be designed, communicated, implemented for all employee groups by December 2021. We gave you an update in January and said we're still in progress in this one. We made some good strides, have some additional strides to take. And so today we wanted to follow up on that a little bit. We were asked for a presentation on Recharge Conference, and a Recharge Conference was what we held in February. It was a professional learning experience for all of our employees in the school district. And so Vicki Dean's going to get us started with that Recharge Conference review. And then we're going to dive into some discussion with Arturo and Gabby about principal supervision and support. Again, the idea of continuous learning and roles. And then finally, I'll wrap us up with administrative professional learning discussion. So this is our goal 3 update. I'll turn it over to Ms. Vicki Dean.
Good evening, y'all. Like Dr. Smith said, I was asked to give y'all an update after Recharge. So that is why I'm here. So last year I brought to y'all the professional learning system and what are the model of looking at what we believe and those components of that. So when you look at this system or model, what stands out to you?
It's continuous. It's constantly moving around and engaged in one another.
It's continuous.
Employee focused?
Employee
Or
focused.
centered?
Employees have a voice.
Employees have a voice, yes.
I think the goal setting piece stands out to me a little bit there, that there's a deliberate work with everybody on moving forward towards the goal.
And it's each and every employee, regardless of where they fall. That's not just classroom teachers, but everybody.
And so it's not really a challenge actually when I think about it, but when we think about these components of looking at it's continuous, we're working together as a group of employees for Belton ISD. We're goal setting, that we want all employees to goal set around their professional learning, and that employees have voice and choice in their learning. And so with that, we challenged ourselves with Recharge to provide an opportunity of learning for most of our employees in Belton ISD around voice and choice. And so that's what I'm going to kind of lead you through. So we had an inaugural Recharge conference in February because of the situation in January, decided to go virtual. But we had 1,409 employees who attended Recharge conference. I had 109 sessions that were offered on that day with 87 submissions of sessions for that day, with 80% of the sessions being delivered by other people, classroom teachers and other departments besides just the teaching and learning department. So that I was pretty proud of that, of offering that variety of sessions. And on that day, around the voice and choice, you could experience that the day through 4 different experiences. If you wanted to attend longer learning sessions, like multipliers, innovative designing of assessments by John Shimmer, unexpressed needs. We had some longer chunk sessions. You could choose to do that. Or if you wanted to experience your day in just hour-long sessions, we offer that. So from sessions that were offered about how to just take care of yourself, to sessions that dealt with world-class employee, one of the competencies, or inspiring instruction. So those were kind of the ways that you could experience that day. And we allow time even for sessions for people just to come together and collaborate and ask questions, like Dr. Smith and HR offered some sessions of just allowing people to give them feedback and allowing each other to have conversations around some different topics.
So I'll use a quick example on that one. In the session that I led, we talked specifically about goal 4 and creating a culture of each and every employee and each and every student feeling valued, supported, and challenged to grow. So it was about picking their brain as a group that wanted to come, bring their best ideas about how we can take the next step as a system to ensure every employee feels that and every student feels that. And so we spent a good hour discussing their feedback, talking about what it meant, and gathering ideas for us to build off of for this next year.
So after the day, since this was our inaugural conference, and like every time we offer any kind of learning experience, we ask for people's feedback. And so there were 2 outcomes that we wanted for that day. And one of them was, how would you rate this inaugural conference? And so we had 468 people who replied, with 80% of the people saying, you know what, it was a pretty good day for that conference. And then we wanted people to be engaged with each other, and how did we meet that? Were you engaged with others in your learning? And we had about 79% of the people who said, I felt I was engaged with others during my session. And so then we asked for that open feedback. Of course, most people said, I would have been more engaged if I would have been in person, which of course, you know. But one of the things that people said, well, what made this day successful was one of the things that we have been striving when it talks about voice and choice and setting your own learning goal. We offered sessions that there were a variety of people from any department that learned together in sessions. And that is what we heard from multiple people. They love being engaged with people from the business office to teachers, from high school to elementary to different, no matter what your background or your current role is. The overall was that people who led their sessions were professional, were knowledgeable in leading their sessions, and then that we had a variety of presenters and sessions that were offered. And like always in continuous improvement, thinking about, okay, for next year, what do we need to improve on? And thinking about, for sure, making sure we offer more sessions for auxiliary staff. It was very teacher focused, like we naturally tend to do, but really pushing ourselves to think about how do we ensure that every employee's needs are being met on this day. And then one of the things was asking for what would you like to see in this upcoming conference. And so that is going to be added next year at the beginning of the year for people to give me feedback and what would they like to see.
Have y'all got those answers, or is that coming later?
I'm gonna do that in the fall when we come back. What would they like to see?
Oh, okay.
And then just, you know, we had a lot of kind of overall arching sessions. I had feedback that people would really like some more specific grade level content geared towards some things that they need. And so I think asking for that feedback beforehand will help too.
If you did it in person, what would the venue be for that many folks?
One of our high schools.
High school?
Yeah. one of our high schools. And with the high schools that, have capacity of about 2,500, then we're able to still manage that for a few years and use that high school. And in fact, we can probably manage it beyond the 2,500 in the future. Going off of one thing that Vicki said too, I think it's important to note that Dr. Golden, I don't know if she might have to correct me, but I believe this next year as well, we have a back-to-back professional learning days in February, and I think that calendar was adopted as well. Is that correct? And purpose behind that is to do something that Vicki said a little bit, is to continue to build off of this. Imagine this being a piece of the puzzle, not the whole puzzle for people who do professional learning all year. This is just an opportunity to have a wider net and learn from people across the district. So Jeff, you brought up about teachers being in grade level groups maybe across the district too. As we continue to move forward and evolve this concept, what we want to do is bring people together that don't usually collaborate together, but might have similar job-alike interests. A fourth grade teacher at Sparta and a fourth grade teacher at Charter Oak might not know each other well, but there's a whole lot they can probably learn from each other if we can get them together and give them the right situation. So imagine a conference type setting where we have sessions and topical information for people to learn to help them grow as an employee, but then also following that up with small job-alike grade level group meetings over a couple of days so they can use that knowledge that they learned and plan for implementation moving forward. So letting people share best practices, what's working well for them, what they're struggling with, and really building off of that in their planning effort.
We're really thinking about pushing the district and our team to think about that. There are times you offer the one and done, but then there's the times you offer what does that professional learning look like over time? If I get it in August, how am I supported throughout the year to continue the learning and the reinforcement and having time to come together and okay, I tried this out. This is how it's going, and part of that is you saw in the professional learning system, collaboration is such an important part of learning. It's not necessarily just hearing a presenter, but coming together and having those conversations around what we're learning and how's it going and what does it need to look like. And then it was for me. I'm not a tweeter, so we really created a recharge channel for people to tweet what's happening. And so as you see up there, we have from Maria Garcia, who's over our custodial services, to outside presenters who were tweeting about their experience for presenting to Belton ISD. And so I think that's one thing is we got feedback from people attending, but got feedback from the people who were presenting, who are outside presenters, of the professionalism and people who work for Belton being engaged when they do come to learning. As a presenter, for those of us who've done that, when people are engaged with you, it gets you excited about what you are, what you're sharing, and the time that you spent to prepare for that day. So, any questions? So next year we'll have our second annual Recharge conference, and like Dr. Smith said, it's supported around another day. And so this summer you'll see a lot of different things happening this summer and in August and all through the next year as we challenge ourselves not just to think about professional learning in the lens through the teacher's lens, but for all employees.
What sort of topics did you guys discuss? What topics did you have?
Sessions, like session topics and stuff that were presented.
So we had a band teacher who discussed on how to track learning and growth. We had a couple art teachers who offered sessions on perseverance around the journey of a graduate competency, but from the side of the adult side, how do I persevere through this year? We've heard there were a lot of sessions, probably about a third of some sessions that were offered, how do I as an adult take care of myself? We had sessions around assessment, looking at being innovative, formative assessments. We had sessions that teachers led through small group instruction and what that looks like in the classroom. We had the Wiseman group come in and lead some sessions with multipliers, and also did some sessions on unexpressed needs of how do the adults collaborate, and how do you collaborate to move work effectively. We had presenters on how do you cover your academic stuff along with taking care of the social emotional needs of your students at the same time. We had sessions that our receptionist offered, where all the receptionists in the district came together, and they had some topics of conversations to collaborate. We had the business office offer the 10 things you need to finish out the year successfully. So really we kind of look at each strand of employees and some sessions through.
Did you have anything on classroom management or discipline, creative discipline techniques?
Yes.
That was one, I think, that we heard that is gonna need to continue to expand. And it was a little bit of what I was referencing earlier, when you get teachers in job-like roles that are able to share, here's what I've been working on regarding discipline or some classroom management, here's what's going well, let's share best practice amongst all of us as a group of 10, then you practice what we call the multiplier concept. You bring the best minds around and realize that intelligence or leadership doesn't land in one office or with one person. It's about multiplying great minds about the big challenges that we have. So that's our hope.
So the 80% of the sessions that were delivered by folks outside of teaching and learning, how did we get those sessions, right? How do we solicit the presenters? I'm assuming there were some people that maybe were voluntold or maybe it was included in their growth expectations to present. How did we go about getting those?
So I did a call for presentations just like you would do for a conference, and sent that out towards the beginning of October. So we had a recharge committee that came together and put together what that proposal form needed to look like, and so we had asked people to align it to inspiring instruction, world-class employee, or social emotional, and then it was a pretty what's not just what's your session title, but what do you want the learning outcome to be, and then how is that going to be delivered, and how are people going to be engaged in that. So
This is like a great way, from an expectation setting standpoint, right? A great way to tap into some of our master teachers, right? Did there happen to be a track around new teachers at all, or? I mean, hey, I know this is year one, right? So there's lots of ideas, but I mean, was there something like that or no?
So no, we have a new teacher conference that we had in the fall, and classroom management, those things, because our with the new teachers we utilize a book called Get Better Faster, and that book is they really talk about what you need to do just before you even go and set up your room, and so we offer a lot some sessions around that for new teachers. But there are some things, like you said, thinking about, definitely trying to think, okay, what does that need to look like next year? Do we continue our strands need to be a little different? So, yeah.
I mean, I heard nothing but great feedback. I didn't hear a ton of feedback, but the folks that I didn't hear from really enjoyed it. Great connection across campuses, right? So
I do want to give Vicky kudos for getting it rolling. If you think about the last time we put together an event for 1,400 people, it doesn't happen very often, and so we got something off the ground in the middle of that COVID wave, and super proud of what we've done and where we're going next. And I think the more we have 2,090 employees. So next year, our goal is to get all 2,090 employees involved, and you know, we have dreams that someday we can be sitting in sessions and we can talk about, here's the big challenge that we're working through right now, here's what I've done, and you can have a classroom teacher and a principal and a bus driver and a central office administrator all sitting, putting their best thinking together to help us take the next step forward in whatever topic that is. And so it's really about pulling our system together to continue to improve because we know more minds are better than one. So.
And it was, you know, it's a mind shift for everyone. So when you're offering a learning day, some people don't see it as it's an opportunity for them. So when people ask the question, well, what am I supposed to attend? I don't see anything for me. That we were having to have those conversations of, well, you need to sign up for Dr. Smith's session. You need, you know, giving them some suggestions.
I feel sorry for them.
So that was, you know, it's a mind shift for everyone. And so I think this was that first attempt of, okay, it's not just learning for teachers. And people now are like, oh, when I'm supposed to sign up, it's a day for all of us. So
The only thing I would say is once it's in person, one of the challenges you could have is with more of the popular sessions, you might have space issues where not everybody can go, even if it's offered multiple times. So that might just be some consideration if you have more than one.
Right.
Or several of them.
yeah, logistics virtually are so much easier than in person.
But not quite as enjoyable.
It's not as quite as enjoyable, that's for sure.
So it's a one-day session, right? A one-day event? Of course, we have different work days during the year. You thought about doing maybe combining 2 work days and having a 2-day event?
Yeah, I think so. I think the way I think of this one is this is a piece of the puzzle, but regarding professional learning, what we hope is that at the beginning of every year, each employee is setting goals with their supervisor and they're seeking out learning, and the school or the department is providing learning as well. And then you add this in, so it's another layer of learning for them. And then they follow that up with conferences with their evaluator, with their professional learning community, the team that they work with in school as well. And so I see this as a piece of the puzzle it's ongoing. It just looks a little different than the ongoing professional learning that we've always done. It's a big event.
You thought about ending it like SLI does, you know, with a big speaker, that kind of thing, where everybody comes together?
Yeah, we had a little bit of that this time with some of the multipliers work. Again, that multipliers book is one that we continue to use and talk about our culture development as a system. And so we did have some support from the Wiseman group on that. And we'll continue to explore the right info and the right event. And this next year, we'd love you all to stop by for the day and attend. We're planning on being face-to-face, obviously, and introducing you all and let you walk around and interact and see the learning that's going on. I think would be great.
The flip side of your suggestion is, like, the reason to keep it one day is so the next day you can have the so what conversation, right? So what did I learn on day one and how does that apply to our campus, right? So we do it both ways.
I think as our district grows, it's hard for people to realize that we have a large system here where lots of times you go to conferences and you might have 300 people in attendance at a conference. We have the opportunity to have 2,000 in attendance at a conference right here within our own district, in an investment where we can learn a whole lot from a lot of the expertise that's in our system right now. And so that's one of the benefits as a growing school district of capitalizing on is there's a learning experience that you can gather from just meeting somebody in a school that you don't usually work with, talking with them about the most important work, and then, as Chris pointed out, taking that and having a so what conversation. Anything else, Vicki?
Y'all have anything else for me?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So the next piece of the puzzle in this, I want you to think about a big puzzle board that we have down there, and Vicki just added a couple of pieces. We're gonna have Arturo and Gabby come up. As you recall, Arturo and Gabby are our principal supervisors. So Arturo is our executive director of secondary school leadership, and Gabby, executive director of elementary school leadership. Learning is a continual pursuit in our system, not just a one-time event. And they're gonna talk to you a little bit about administrative professional learning and their role as both supervisor and coach for our principals in the system.
bring that one up.
Busy typing.
I thought it looked the same. I was trying to- I thought, man, they did a good job coordinating that, but.
A little harder. There you go. Sorry about that.
No
Really
problem.
thrown.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Thanks. Nice to see you all. We had a great Easter weekend. We're here to talk to you a little about principal supervision and support. And the purpose of this discussion is to talk about our role as Executive Director of School Leadership and the investment in supporting highly effective principal leadership, right? Which is our purpose, which is why we're here. I want to start with research, and it reads, the impact of high quality leadership on student achievement is second only to that of high quality instruction. And so the way that we read that is, the most important person to student achievement is the classroom teacher, right? Research says that that's the most important investment we can make as a school system, and that is for our teachers, because they are impacting our students every single day. The second most important impact is our leadership, our principals as instructional leaders. And 2 years ago now, you all made the commitment of our 2 positions, which we're still very grateful for, because that was the board acknowledging an investment in our principals as instructional leaders. And so again, we're here today to kind of give you an update on that. And so we want, just like any position in the ISD, we want our principals to feel valued, supported, and challenged to grow. And so last January, we shared with you during a board meeting, we talked about, if you remember, our coaching experiences, right? When we were coaches, or we had been coached personally or professionally in our lives, and the impact that coaches have had on us. And so that coaching experience really lies in that support area, that how we value and support our principals, right? It's having that coaching mindset, being able to build that trust and that relationship to provide honest and genuine feedback with our principals. There's also the supervision side of things, that we actually supervise principals. Not everybody knows that. We do their final evaluation, and we also hold our principals accountable to their building goals that they say that is important to them and impacting their student achievement, and also district-wide goals. Okay, and so that we put that on the balance beam here, because our challenge as leaders, central office leaders, is to always find that balance, when to push and when to pull, when to challenge, when to support, when to have hard conversations, when to put our arms around each other and say, we're in this, we're in this together. So we know as leaders in any system that is a constant, the art of leadership that is an important part of our jobs and the principals' jobs. And so today we're going to talk to you a little bit about some of the specifics and what we're doing as central office leadership to support principals, who then support teachers, who then ultimately lead to student success for each and every student. And so Gabby's going to take it away and dive into some specific leadership responsibilities and some learning that we've done with McCrell, around balanced leadership for student learning.
So we've used this word research a lot. We've alluded to the research, and we really want to make that tangible to you all today, to develop an understanding of when we're saying the research, here's what we're saying, and we're going to give you opportunity to kind of manipulate the learning as well today to help understand how we might put the research theories in practice. McCrell is an organization that over decades of research and theory and practice in school buildings, focused on leadership, focused on teaching, has drawn some conclusions and say that there's these 21 key leadership responsibilities that are projected that we need our principals as leaders to focus on, that they need to prioritize these responsibilities in order to impact student outcomes. It's very important to hear from us. Oftentimes when we talk about leadership, it can feel like personality or characteristics. McCrell and our balanced leadership learning really highlights that these are responsibilities and actions that can be taught, they can be learned, they can be developed in order to improve student outcomes and leadership. So I wanted to just make that really clear that these are things that we can practice and get better at and learn in order to have a positive impact on our staff and our students. That's important. So if you'll take a look real quick, there's 21. It can look like a lot, right? And it is a lot. School leadership is complex. I want to draw your attention to a few that are listed up here before we go deeper, and specifically focus and involvement in teaching and learning, and protects are three that I'd like to contextualize real quick. When we talk about focus, we're asking school leaders to really identify some clear goals and targets based on student need and things that they want to impact through their leadership and with their teams. Keeping those goals at the forefront of their work in their community, with teachers, with other staff, that's what focus is all about. Having a tight, laser-like lens on what we need to do to move student outcomes. When you have that focus, the involvement in teaching and learning, this is really calling on our leaders to be present and a part of the planning process, the building of instructional experiences for students, looking at evidence of student outcomes, being present and side by side with the teachers in that work. And then connecting to those two ideas, the language of protect. Protect is really about being aware as a school leader of all the internal and external factors that might distract a teacher from being able to focus on teaching and learning, and removing those barriers. So that protection is really about allowing teachers to focus on teaching and learning.
Sometimes that can look like realizing that the front office is making too many announcements to the PA system and constantly interrupting the flow in the classroom. That's an example of protects. You need a leader who's honed in on the experience that the teachers are having in the classroom, working with kids, and doing their best to adjust things so that the teacher isn't taken off task with the students.
Involvement in that teaching and learning helps with that, right? The other thing, there's one more I want to really draw your attention to here, is situational awareness. To build on what Matt was just describing, situational awareness is about being aware of what's unspoken, right? Sensing what might become a problem before it becomes a problem, and responding now instead of later to something. Being aware of how your staff is feeling. What are the demands on their shoulder right now that might be preventing them from focusing on what's most important and putting action in place? We'll use the language of seeing around corners sometimes, but that's really situational awareness, what might get in the way in responding right now. So I am going, thank you, Arturo. Arturo is going to bring you a deck of cards for you
We're
to
actually gonna
share.
have a little fun at the share.
Yes.
To share.
We're gonna dig in, right? And Mr. Norwood, I'm gonna ask Arturo to join you, so you actually have a partner. So what you have in your hand, we're just like the kids, right? Like we're ready to dig in, and this is great. So what Arturo just handed you is just a deck of cards that has a leadership responsibility on each card. So step one, I'm gonna ask you to deal your deck. Divide them between the two of you at your table. Alright.
All of them?
Yes, sir. There is a blank, there's a blue one.
I go after shuffle? Oh.
You
You said I did.
I want to see how good your bridge is.
It's a wild card.
Before we get into this, is there a way to win this game? Or is this not-
That is a great question. It's okay. Yeah, it's the 21 responsibilities, so one will have 11 and one of you will have 2. Okay, so what's on the screen is just a list right now, right? So what's in front of you on the cards are each of the leadership responsibilities with a descriptor and actions associated with those. So take just a minute to get oriented to the cards. You know to read them all, but maybe pick one and get oriented.
What do you mean by get oriented?
Notice where the title of that leadership responsibility is, the descriptor underneath it.
The boulder's the
The
descriptor?
bold is the descriptor, yes. And then the actions are listed out below. All right, so now I'm gonna issue a challenge. If I could just draw your attention to this language of purposeful community. We are asking our principals to build a purposeful community. And that's a lot. It means having a clear focus on targets, having a moral purpose that's defined by your values, your beliefs, and aligning your practices to those, making sure that there's a tight focus on student achievement with an academic, a push for academic achievement for each of our students. It's about bringing your whole community, including families, into building that purposeful community so that everybody understands what your focus is and you're all moving towards it together. So that's a lot, right? It's also about using your assets to support where you're going. That's tangible things like the instructional resources in classrooms. It's things that you can't touch. It's your people and knowing their strengths. So purposeful community, it's big. It's a lot to think about. So with your half of the deck, I want you to look at your cards and identify 2 responsibilities that you think are most important for principals to focus on. By yourself, pick 2, and then you're gonna have some debate time.
Is we're asking them to create a purposeful community at their school, what 2 responsibilities do we see
Yes,
that are really important?
yes.
Okay.
What do you think that this is important?
We can't use the 3 that y'all already talked about, right?
You could.
You can,
Use any.
Yeah.
What stands out to you?
Gabby might have been wrong, you never know.
I find it out all the time.
Yeah, but you said purposeful.
To build
Purposeful community.
That's where you have to say.
Just 2?
Just 2.
I think that's the point.
That's the harder. Yes. Think about 30 more seconds and you're gonna have to commit.
At the end, they're all
There's a
supposed to
reason
be
they're
kind of
here.
good.
Mr.
Well, it's kind of important, they're all.
Mr. Norwood, I'm giggling. What did you mean by that's the point?
Well, that's the point, because, so you only get to pick 2, which means you're either leaving 8 or 9 behind, but none of them will work. But I mean, you can still pick, hey, you gotta start here, but even if you start here, if there's not a foundation underneath it, it really doesn't matter where you start, you're gonna have to use all of it eventually.
Super complex, right? So you're stepping into principal leadership shoes. So now it's gonna get a little harder. You were having a hard time narrowing to 2, so now you have a partner with you. Talk about what you chose and why, and now I'm gonna ask you all to agree on 2.
Okay. That one,
Yeah, I always go back and say.
establish career goals,
So it has to do with what
and obviously communication, because that one doesn't work without that one. The buy-in, right? Right?
Yes.
Choose 2. Choose 2 or choose 1? Well, you pick first.
Purposeful community. Purposeful.
See that I said were visibility and relationships, having good relationships.
Alright. But I'm gonna go with that one, because I don't think you can have purpose without that.
And then the emotional side, it's deep, that's a line.
There we go.
I'm watching it. It'll take about another minute to commit.
Give her final answer. And neither one of them are mine. Just so you're aware.
Wow. Aaron went just full Aaron.
Sorry, I thought we had to go to 1, so we can just do one of these then. One of these and then.
Resources.
About 30 seconds left. Sure.
Yeah.
Do the job.
Okay, I'm just gonna ask a couple of groups to share out. Where'd you land?
We landed on focus and communication.
How'd you make that?
right away.
Did you what?
I don't know.
Wait, what did you?
I said you were half right.
How'd y'all come to those two?
Because I think, I mean, you really kind of played your case with the focus. And for me, communication is key to really all of the rest. If you've got great communication, then we can encompass all of these other things into, if you have great
We can pretty
communication.
much abstract several of these into these two. So,
What were the two?
focus and communication.
Mr. Taggart, where did y'all land?
We landed on relationships and communication. I was just giving an example of me buying this new business a couple weeks ago. I've spent more time trying to build relationships with my employees and taking some unhealthy things that I kind of heard that were going on in the former culture and changing into a team concept and building those relationships. Because I've learned as an old coach and as a person that's owned a business for a long time, when people buy into your concepts and you have good relationships, they'll run through a brick wall for you. And so I think it's about building trust and relations with your employees is important. I think it's the foundation of the whole thing. That's just me. And then there's yours.
Communication?
Yep.
What I told Ty was if there's no communication, there's nothing. I don't care if you've got the best principal in the world and the best teacher in the world, if there's no communication, there's no success.
I think along in that communication is being a former educator and being married to an educator. Part of that communication thing is I think all the teachers want a decision maker, and then a person who's comfortable with making decisions, and then communicating as to the why we made that decision. And then you'll deal with the backlash from some of them in the office later on. But the ones that's not scared to go ahead and let's make this decision and move forward. I think that's part of that communication.
So you actually just highlighted situational awareness as well. So this communication piece, our school leaders have to be aware that communication looks different for everybody that they work with, right? And effective communication does. And so you mentioned backlash behind. I may know that a decision that I'm about to communicate will be very uncomfortable for someone or a group of people. And so I can shift my communication to meet those needs before it becomes a big issue as well. You also have highlighted here the complexities. Everybody didn't come up with the same exact answer because there's not a right answer. And that's one of the beauties of our roles is that we're able to sit side by side with the principal, be in the classrooms with the principal and say, what are the areas of focus and what are the leadership responsibilities needed right now and over time in order to impact student outcomes based on what your community needs are. And so you sitting side by side and coming to agreement on something, it kind of emulates what we will work through, right? What's in front of us? You're trying to establish purposeful community. What is it you feel is most important right now? I'm a partner that's from the outside but comes in and gets to see as well, and let's come to some agreements and put an action plan in place on how you might address these. So you really illustrated what our roles look like in many ways, but also the complexities of leadership responsibilities and actions in front of us.
I don't think there's a more complex job in our district than the 19 principals that we have.
Totally.
Y'all heard me say this over and over and over again, that 19 cultures out there. We can put these things on the walls, we can come up with these concepts, these goals, these visions, the journey and all these things, but when it gets back to each campus, it's that one person's job to take all that stuff, but then create a culture that works for that group and that community and those neighborhoods that school is in. I think, and you get there at 6:30 in the morning, and then that night you got a PTA meeting, or you got to go cover the 7th grade girls basketball game.
Yep.
You get home at 10:30, and then you start over again the next morning. I think the principal is the hardest job in school, personally.
I would absolutely agree. It's so complex, and when you hear the research about second to the teacher, like it's an extremely important role that has a high impact on students, right? So again, want to highlight that these are things that we believe these responsibilities can be practiced and learned, and we can support those in our roles. I do want to also call attention to 3 more. There's a lot 21 responsibilities is a lot for a principal to think about, and that doesn't count all the actions as well, right? We believe in balanced leadership and building on people's strengths. So I may have a partner on my administrative team that one of these responsibilities is something that I need to lean into with that partner on my instructional leadership team because it's a strength for them. I need to build from my teachers' strengths. They may be able to lead within our community. But there are 3 key principal responsibilities that the principal must own. Doesn't mean they might not share it, but they must own, based on research from Imprel. They must own visibility. You've got to be present and visible with your teachers and your community and leading the work, right? You have to have knowledge of teaching and learning in that principal leadership role. And you have to lead from place of your ideals and beliefs. You have to lead with ideals and beliefs within your community with your teachers. Yes, sir.
So I have a question about one of the 3 here, the visibility. I think there has to be a balance with you guys in this position, pulling those people off campus as few times during the year as possible. Because yeah, you can come up with all these great trainings and all these great things you can do to build all this stuff, but if they're not on their campus with their sleeves rolled up, that's where they need to be. So finding that balance of how few times during the year that you pull your principals off campus.
Yeah, what we'll probably be sticking to is a monthly item. There needs to be face-to-face time with all principals together. I can't not have. But the investment in it, and again, using that word for text, we, just like principals have to protect their teachers from outside distractions, we have to work to do that for our principals as well. So regarding principal professional learning, I think there's a real fine balance there. We have to be able to meet with them and talk about principal stuff, but we also have to be able to say all the other outside influence stuff too.
I'd also add to that, and this last slide really focuses on that, as part of the value in our roles being in campuses, right? So on this slide, this is just intended to give you a visualization of how Arturo and I allocate our time. 80% of our time is devoted to principal leadership. About 20 of that is in shared learning. And there's some just real high level things there for you to understand how we invest in shared learning. It's in leadership learning, where they come together as principals and we invest in them. We've invested in balanced leadership training for all of our principals. We are collaborating with our teaching and learning team and with our student support services team. And that might happen in shared space. But if we could really invest together today on the far right side and how we spend our time with principals individually, that's about 60% of our time. It's 3 days a week that we are on campuses with principals and one-on-one coaching. It's not just sitting in their office and coaching. We are in the classrooms. We're talking about what is your focus in your community. And then we're going into the classrooms and examining teaching and learning together. Arturo and I really try to stay in a listening stance to hear how our principals are talking about the experiences for students, talking about teaching and learning, and then asking those coaching questions to go deeper. And so when we go visit a classroom, then we'll step out. What did you notice? What do you wonder? How might you support that teacher? What are your next moves with this teacher? And then because we're there so frequently, we're able to follow up on those things and the next time we're there. We may go back to the same place. We may go to different places and address those trends or individual teacher things that we're seeing over time. But our job is to ask the questions of principals to get them to the place where they're supporting their teachers. So we do classroom walks based on evidence, based on what the focus areas are for that campus, and we're constantly coming back in cycles there. The other key piece is the supervision. And I want to give you a real quick just story of how that's changed for principals in the last 2 years. We know that evaluations are valuable when you're involved in it, when you're invested in the process, where it's not just done to you. And one of the big adjustments that we made that was painful as a change for our principals was asking them to self-assess, where we've set goals, we're looking at evidence. In the fall, we're there every other week with you, we're in your classrooms with you, and when it does come time for that evaluation season, this should be something that's shared and you should be equally invested in this process as we are. And so we've asked our principals to conduct self-assessments, and that was really hard. It was uncomfortable for all of us, for them, for us, but we've committed to staying side by side with them and to working through their goals with them. And they've truly embraced the continuous improvement and growth mindset process. But it was something that was a shift for them, right? But there's, for either one of us, we can say we don't walk into those seasons with surprises because we are there working the work with our campus principals each week. And then the last thing is just some just-in-time coaching. We all know that things arise. Maybe some problems that were unexpected, and we are there to support and walk through with principals and hold principals accountable for action to be taken related to problems. Sometimes it involves getting out our leadership responsibility cards and saying, what's the problem in front of us right now? And what do we think we need to do to best serve our community? So that's, in a nutshell, what our roles are like, and one, the coaching and support, yes, but also that balance with supervision, and we want to answer any questions that you guys have about it.
Go ahead.
I want to echo what Ty said. I mean, I really do believe this is the toughest job we have. I mean, the principals are like mayors with their attendance metrics. And the 21 leadership responsibilities, I don't know, I'd be interested in maybe having a follow-up conversation. We don't have time for it here to understand how that works into goal setting and evaluation of the principals, because 21 goals is too many, right? You can't, 21 priorities, you can't prioritize, one of them. And so, understanding, like, do we break these down? Like, how do these kind of map to that process? I don't know. Yeah, I just think this is such a tough job, such an important job. I'm so happy we took the step 2 years ago to put these 2 positions in place. I think the investment in our staff is well worth it. So thank you for what you're doing.
I'm gonna echo that too, Chris. I've had a couple of questions in the last couple of school years, and I just want to compliment you all on your thoroughness. And I just never felt brushed off or get out of the way. It's been the complete opposite, and it's been worked very well. And appreciate what you guys are doing for us behind the scenes, because I mean, it's such a hard position, and there's so many things coming at them from so many different directions. And there are things, every one of us make little mistakes, and y'all are there to fix them, but also help them through them. And I've seen that in the instances that I've been involved with, and I compliment you guys on that.
Just echo that. Here's a question I have, and if you can be as specific or not specific, but I know you are talking just broad idea of what you guys do. Can you give us like maybe a specific example? Because I think you said it was perfect. Follow-up is when you're going through something and then you get to follow up. I think follow-up is really key as well. But could you give us an example without being too specific, but be specific, like on something that, like a celebration? Is there a specific celebration? I know you probably don't want to disclose.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, there's
Just
a
let
ton
me
of
like more like, yeah, I can. You want to?
I'll share. One of the most powerful parts of our job is to sit down with the principal, and where we'll be vulnerable with each other, and for a principal to say, this is an area that I really am struggling with, and I need help with, and I don't feel successful at, and can you, sitting side by side and actually learning together about that thing, not to be there to say, you need to do it this way, this way, and this way. That is the wrong approach. It's asking questions, it's investigating that topic together, and at the end, having a principal come through and say, it's really scary at first, but I'm so glad we did it. And I feel like I'm better for kids today because of that process and those conversations. And I got chills with that a little bit, because that's happened a number of times where we've been able to slow down and go deep, because they are flying. They're flying. And our job often is to just slow them down and be able to go deep on something instead of trying to cover it all the time. That's what
I'll use an example, and it goes to the challenge of being in that role as a principal right now. Part of Arturo and Gabby's job when they go out, they have a standing set of questions that they'll work through with principals. And if a principal has had 17 emails and a broken water pipe and there's no heat down the hallway and an upset cohort of teachers about something, there's a lot going on right there. So part of their job is to help them take a breath, set that stuff aside, and go back to the main work of the school and asking the question of how are we working today to improve student learning, and being able to keep the focus despite the whirlwind of all the other situations around. So that takes positive relationships, that takes good coaching, that takes sometimes where you have to have enough situational awareness to look at the principal and realize we're gonna have to reschedule this one-on-one right now because there's enough stuff going on that we're not able to get to what we need to get to. So we'll come back, they have Dora's schedule, and Dora will schedule for next week. We'll come back and we'll pick it up from there. But part of their role is to help maintain focus, what the school needs to improve student outcomes, to help those principals realize how to manage change within their own little community, because improvement is about change. And then finally, to create that purposeful community where everybody in the school is pointed in the same direction to make sure that they're accomplishing what they need to for kids. So by focusing on those three areas and using the language of leadership responsibilities, it's not that a principal is going to be perfect in 21 of those. In fact, they say that's the wrong thought to have. It's about thinking of these leadership responsibilities and how you use a team to uplift those in a system so that you can accomplish what you need to for kids. Do you have one you want to share real quick? Because we got to wrap up.
Really quick, because it illustrates that drawing, the illustration that Arturo showed about the why. So a principal, we're walking and we're asking those questions. What feedback might a teacher need? What will your next steps be? And so I have a principal that has expressed like she's intimidated by giving feedback at times, right? So then we're able to sit and talk about what is the specific feedback and what's going to get in your way. And for a principal to be able to name vulnerable and be vulnerable with, I have some fear. Okay, so let's think about the hardest conversation you could have. Where do you feel that fear the most? Okay, let's set a time frame on that. I want to follow up in 2 days and hear how that feedback went. So we take some small chunks with things that they can name or getting in their way, and the places that are the hardest. And so being able to support a principal in taking steps with things that may cause them some stress or anxiety, and then be able to celebrate the outcomes of that open doors for others is pretty powerful. So that was one example. We both have a laundry list of examples that have really helped us inform our why as well.
We're very thankful for Arturo and Gabby and their roles. So McCREL stands for Mid-Continent Research Educational Laboratory. They've been around for a long time. For those educators that know a little bit about educational research, this is where Bob Marzano, started his work as a researcher in the world of education. And this has been, Balanced Leadership's been around for about 20 years. They went through a big research project to get information on what the most effective principals do across the nation to increase student learning and to create the culture that we want in our schools. And so that's what this is based on. We're continuing to work with all leaders in our system to think about how we focus, manage change well, and create a purposeful community that everybody's proud of. And Arturo and Gabby are helping us do that. So appreciate the presentation. We ran out of time for the last part. And so I'll bring that back to you. There's also investment in administrator professional learning at the central office level. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that in the future. So appreciate your time today talking about Goal Free.
Thank you. Being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at